celebrate Black History Month, and today's guest researched the life of Mary Church Terrell. Terrell was a well-known African-American social justice activist who lived in D.C. and taught at the first African-American public high school in the nation. Joining us this afternoon, the author of Unceasing, Militant, The Life of Mary Church Terrell, Dr. Allison Parker. Thank you, who is also a professor at the University of Delaware and a member of the National Women's History Museum Scholars Advisory Council. Thank you, Dr. Parker. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So Mary Church Terrell, born into slavery, she fought for women's rights, including the right to vote and civil rights. What do we know about how she grew up that helped frame who she would become?
Well, she was born enslaved to a family where her parents were both enslaved, but their parents, the fathers, were their white enslavers. And so she ended up having a situation where after the end of the Civil War, her parents were able to quickly move into businesses, and her father became quite wealthy, as did her mother. In that context, they sent her to school outside of the South. She was born in Tennessee, but she got educated in Ohio, and she got a degree from Oberlin College, and also not only a bachelor's, but a master's, which at the time was very rare for any woman of her race in the 1880s.
And talk about the reason for moving to the North for education. The system wasn't welcoming for people who looked like her.
No, there was almost no schools available, including at the elementary school level, that were of any quality. And her parents could tell that she was so intelligent and wanted to give her the best opportunity that they could. And since they had thriving businesses, they were able to do so. And she took advantage of this by becoming an educator. Not only did she teach in Washington, D.C. at the first Black high school, but she became the first Black woman on the D.C. Board of Education and served an 11-year term, which at the time was the longest term that anyone had served. And so she was very important. She also was a co-founder of the NAACP and the first woman president of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs that started in 1896.
And I was listening to an interview that you did on your book previously where you were talking about her taking her education well beyond what was expected, because it was thought of what could you do with such a high level of education in that time, in that era.
Yes, she was discouraged from getting a bachelor's degree. Bachelor's degrees were considered to be gentlemen's degrees, and for ladies, they were considered to get an AA at the highest level, so getting an associate's degree. And she persisted, got not only a bachelor's, but a master's, and ended up speaking multiple languages. And when she went into public teaching, she was teaching Greek and Latin, which was definitely a male territory. So she was quite rare in many ways. Unceasing,
Militant, what does that title mean?
Well, this is the term that Paul Robeson, who was an activist and an actor and a singer, used in his eulogy for her, saying that she was an unceasing militant in the Black freedom struggle. And that's because all the way up to the end of her life, and she was born in 1863, she died in 1954, and so she lived to see Brown v. Board of Education, and also launched her own U.S. Supreme Court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court in 1953 and won. It desegregated all of the restaurants and businesses in Washington, D.C., but it's not as well known as something like Brown v. Board because it only affected the District of Columbia.
Wow, quite a remarkable life. What else will readers learn about Mary Church's ties to the Washington, D.C. area?
Well, she was active in Washington, D.C. for over 60 years. And so what we see is her spending much of her time in Congress, going to committees testifying, speaking for the Equal Rights Amendment. She was very active and met with multiple presidents. She was somebody who took advantage of her physical location in the Capitol to be an advocate for African Americans' rights and women's rights for her entire life. And that's what they'll see in the book.
Yeah, I find it so interesting and fascinating the way you look at the intersection of gender, race, and laws, as well as she worked to reshape public policy in our society.
That's right. She believed that you could make changes through interacting and through networking with other women, including white women and men. But then she also used the law to force issues for integration and equality if the society was balking at those attempts.
Okay, and Dr. Parker, where can folks find your book?
It's on Amazon and in all the regular locations.
All the places where books are sold, right?
Exactly.
All right. Dr. Allison Parker, thank you so much for joining us this noon.
Oh, thank you. Bye.